Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video we will see how to effectively configure and manage Azure storage accounts. Azure Storage is Microsoft Cloud storage solution for modern data storage scenarios. For example, suppose you work for a large e-commerce company that needs to store and serve a vast number of product images to its customers. Now, the company wants a scalable and reliable solution that can handle high traffic and ensure data durability. They want to quickly restore data if there is an outage, right? So you as an Azure admin or a cloud admin, you will configure storage accounts and select appropriate storage types in Azure. This video will cover topics such as implementing replication strategies, configuring secure access to storage, or I'll cover that in another videos. The goal of these videos is to provide Azure administrators with the knowledge and skills to effectively configure and manage Azure storage accounts. So we'll start with implementing Azure storage. You should know a few things about Azure storage. You can think of Azure storage as supporting three categories of data: structured, unstructured, and virtual machine data. You can have virtual machine data, which is data storage includes disk and files. Unstructured data is the least organized, which is non-relational data. That is, it can be used or stored by using Azure Blob Storage and Azure Data Lake Storage. And then you have structured data, which is stored in a relational format that has a shared schema, which can be stored by using Azure Table Storage, Cosmos DB, Azure SQL Database. So I'll log on to the portal and take it from there. Okay, I'm logged on to the portal. So here I will first type in storage. You will have storage accounts. I have no storage accounts to display because I've not created one. Now let's say you are beginning to create or use Azure storage. You should think or consider these things. You need to consider about durability and availability. You need to consider about secure access. You need to consider scalability. You need to consider manageability. You need to consider data accessibility, right? Because when you cover all these points that we have explored, this will help you maintain or manage your storage services with ease on Azure. Okay, now we come to Blob Storage. Blob Storage is Microsoft Object Storage solution for the cloud. Blob Storage is optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured or non-relational data, as I told you before. Then you have Azure Files, which enables you to set up highly available network file shares. Then you have Queue Storage, which is used to store and retrieve messages. You have Azure Table Storage that stores non-relational structured data, also known as structured NoSQL data. Then you should also be aware about the storage account types. Then because you have standard and premium. I'll show you all these options when I'll create one. Okay, I'll start. You click on create to start creating Azure storage account. You will have your subscription. If you have multiple subscription, it will show up here. I have only pay as you go subscription. It will show all the storage resource groups. I'll create one. You can create it with any name. Make sure that is available. You need to give it a name. You need to give it a location. I'll tell you what is an Azure extended zone later after covering the basics of it. Let's say I'm taking East US. Primary service, Azure Files or Blob Storage. I'll go with Blob Storage for now. Now you need to have the performance. You need to have the standard or premium. Recommended for most scenarios, general purpose V2 account. Recommended for scenarios that require low latency. So this will also come into the picture when you are considering the Azure storage services. So standard storage accounts are backed by magnetic hard disk drive, which is HDD. a standard storage account provides the lowest cost per GB. You can use standard storage for applications that require bulk storage or where data is infrequently accessed. The premium storage accounts are backed by SSDs or solid state drives and offer consistent low latency performance. We can use premium storage for Azure Virtual Machine Disk with IO intensive application like databases. Then you have standard general purpose V2, you have premium blobs, premium file shares, premium page blobs. Let's say I'm going with a standard here for the lab. Then you have the geo-redundant storage, GRS, or locally redundant storage. Now you have these four options because this will determine the replication strategies, right? The data in the storage account is always replicated to ensure durability and high availability. Remember, I mentioned these points when you are considering the storage services. Now, Azure Storage Replication copies the data to protect from planned and unplanned events. These events range from transient hardware failures, network or power outages, massive natural disasters, etc. We can choose to replicate the data within the same data center, across zonal data centers within the same region, and even across regions, right? This is what it is talking about. So locally redundant storage, which is LRS, is the lowest cost replication options and offers the least durability compared to other strategies. In this, the application stores data that can be easily reconstructed if data loss occurs. Right? Then you have zone redundant storage or a ZRS. The zone redundant storage synchronously replicates the data across 3 storage clusters in a single region. And each storage cluster is physically separated from the others and resides in its own availability zone. Then you have GRS, which is geo-redundant storage. It replicates the data to a secondary region hundreds of miles away from the primary location of the source data. GRS provides a higher level of durability even during a regional outage. And it is designed to provide at least 99.99969 durability. Then you have Geo Zone Redundant Storage, which is GRS. It combines the high availability and zone redundant storage with protection from regional outages as provided by geo-redundant storage. Because data in a GZRS storage account is replicated across 3 different availability zones in the primary region. So I'll go with LRS because I'm doing it for the lab, not hosting any prod applications. So then you have to consider when choosing replication strategies as well. That if a node in data center is unavailable, or entire data center is unavailable, or if there is a region-wide outage, or if there is a read access during region-wide outage, we need, right? So after adding all of these, I click on review and create. It will give me all the options while it does the validation. All the options that I selected will come up here, and I can click the option of create here. It will initialize the deployment. It will submit the deployment template for resource group Azure Storage Lab, the name that I gave, and it will create a storage account. Now, after the storage account is created, every object you store in Azure Storage has a unique URL address. Because the storage account name forms the subdomain portion of the URL address, the combination of the subdomain and the domain name, which is specific to each service, forms an endpoint for your storage account. Because how would you access the storage account, right? It has a blob container, it has a table service, queue service, file service, right? So my storage account name, if you see, okay, I'll just go to resource, test Azure storage, right? So the blob in this would be called as, if you see the blob service here, have the file service, queue service, and the table service. I'll click on blob service. If you see the containers, the file shares, let's say I add a blob here or a container. Test container, I will not go with these options. I just create a storage container for the lab. Click on here. You can upload the files here in a blob container, right? And so container service would have the name of the storage account, then have the endpoint as .blob.co.windows.net. The table service would have .table.co.windows.net. Queue would have .q.co.windows.net. The file service would have .file.co.windows.net. Right? We create the URL to access an object in the storage account by appending the object's location in the storage account for the endpoint. Right? You can configure custom domains to access blob data in your Azure storage, as we know that the default endpoint for Azure blob storage is storage account name.blob.co.windows.net. If you map a custom domain and subdomain such as www.contoso.com to the blob or web endpoint for your storage account, your users can use that domain to access blob storage. Right, so if you go to settings, you click on endpoints. See, this is what I was talking about: the name, then the endpoint, the file service endpoint, the queue endpoint, and the data lake endpoint, and the static website. I don't know if that's publicly reachable or not, because I've not created anything, right? And through storage browser, you can see what all things you have created in here. And then you have secure storage endpoints, because each service requires certain steps to configure the service endpoints and restrict network access. So if you go into security and networking, if you click on networking in your storage account, public network access enabled from all networks, network routing. And you can also configure service endpoints. You can configure the service to allow access to one or more public IP ranges. Your subnets in virtual network must exist in the same Azure region or region pair as your storage account, right? So I hope now you can effectively create and manage storage account. Few of the features that we listed and what all things you should know while you are preparing for your AZ104 account. This will give you a good head start, and you can cover the assessments which are available on Microsoft to further enhance your knowledge. Do as much as lab you could do in your test tenant to explore more features and more options for all the Azure services that we are covering. So I hope this was informative for all of you. If you need any further information, please mention them in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a good day.